G'day YouTube. Warbles on a lot here. With a video about the meaning of MAGA, Donald Trump's catchphrase slogan, in the light of the trade war which the excited states has launched on the rest of the world. Apparently because the President of the United States does not understand that when he imposes tariffs on the products of other nations, attempting to sell them inside his economy, what he does is he contributes to the inflation rate. He pushes prices up. And at the moment, the retail industry globally is screaming and wailing about nobody having any disposable income to spare to throw at the latest advertising campaign. So raised tariffs suppress consumer demand, suppress the economy, cause businesses to close their doors. That's what Prissy Dunce Tronel Dump will achieve. A few days ago, I heard a pundit, an alleged expert, bracket, drip under pressure, but somebody who was qualified sufficiently to be pontificating in front of a free-to-air television camera and getting a global stage for their presentation. He suggested that when you look at the multiplier effects, the knock-on effects, the retaliatory second and third and fourth wave iterations of the trade war that Prissy Dunce Tronel Dump has unleashed, he said you could be looking at a 70% reduction in international trade. 70% reduction in international trade. I wonder if that will correlate as a 70% reduction in global greenhouse gas emissions. If there are 70% less factories producing for export, if there's 70% less agriculture being exported by the countries that export agricultural produce, 70% less manufactured goods. Kind of sort of sounds like 70% less greenhouse gas emissions. And at this current point in time, could that be necessarily a bad thing? It means that America will get out of the international market. It means that MAGA, M.A.G.A, it doesn't stand for Make America Great Again. It doesn't even stand for Make America Grovel. Always. No. MAGA stands for Make America Go Away. Make America Go Away. Tronel Dump has done more to achieve the hopes, dreams and ambitions of every anti-American protester who ever took to the streets for the last 100 years than all of them combined. Do you remember back during the Vietnam War when right-thinking people all over the planet used to march in the streets singing, "Go home, Yankee, go home, fuck off. Go home, Yankee, fuck off, right now. Go home, Yankee, fuck off. Stay away. Go home, Yankee, don't come back. Fuck off." You remember then? Right. Well, finally, Tronel Dump, the Prissy Dunce, the man who has most recently given himself kingly powers to impose tariffs on any nation for any reason without Congress or the Senate having any ability to hinder his whim. And the name of the act with which he's given himself these powers, granted himself these powers, the Fair and Reciprocal Trade Act, the Fart Act. Tronald Dump wants to fart before he shits as he closes down world trade. Speaking as a greenie, speaking as somebody who's worried about the existential threat to life on planet Earth posed by industrial scale human emissions of greenhouse gases, I would have to say this is possibly, just possibly, the most encouraging sign for life on Earth since Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev looked as if they were going to nuke the shit out of each other back in about 1984. And let's face it, right at the moment, atmospheric carbon dioxide's punched through 410 parts per million about a month ago. 98.5% of all the animal biomass on the land surface of Earth is humans and humans' domestic livestock and pets. You know, if Reagan and Gorbachev had have nuked each other, a full three-phase, multi-level thermonuclear exchange, half of all the atmospheric carbon, which is currently up there because we have dug it up and burned it and put it in the sky, half of that would be underground still. And because it takes 20, 25 years between me burning a litre of fuel in my car engine and the temperature of planet Earth finishing its response to that extra carbon dioxide that I have emitted, if Reagan and Gorbachev had nuked each other in 1984, global warming would have finished 5 or 10 years ago. So, it begins to look as if Tronald Dump has become the Excited States President, Prissy Dunce, as a sort of emergency last-ditch response by the Gaia hypothesis to the existential crisis facing the biosphere. I'm sure you've heard of the Gaia hypothesis. It was cooked up by a fellow called James Lovelock, who was a theoretical nuclear physics researcher, an Englishman. And he came to the startling inspiration, realization, that everything on planet Earth which is alive works together and functions as if it were one single organism. So that the classic Darwinian response of the peppered moth in Britain to the Industrial Revolution, where once upon a time the trees had white-coloured bark with a few little dark speckles, and all the moths were light-coloured with a few little dark speckles, and the British started burning coal, and the air was full of smoke, and the trees became soot-begrimed and dark, and all the white moths were easy for the birds to see and pick out and eat, so it was only the moths that had lots of dark speckles that lived long enough to breed. And by the time Charlie Darwin was thinking about it, the speckled moths or the peppered moths, whatever they were all as dark as the trees. And then in the 1950s and 60s, after the Clean Air Act was brought in, the coal smoke wasn't in the air, and the trees cleaned up their act, and the moths changed back to being light-coloured. On a grander scale, according to Lovelock, there's a thing called the Siberian snow daisy. And if the Siberian snow daisy, which is sometimes white, sometimes black, if it's confronted by a really, really, really cold series of seasons, all the Siberian snow daisies that are white are frozen and they die off. Not all, because some are in sunny little spots and they can get by, but most of them die off. And then what happens is that all the Siberian snow daisies are black, and that changes Earth's albedo. And it means that more solar energy, insolation, stays on the surface of the Earth because the black snow daisies heat up, and it heats up the air. And yep, you get the picture? And what happens when it's a really unusually hot season? The snow daisies all turn white because the black ones overheat. And according to Lovelock, these snow daisies, just by turning Siberia dark or light, could change the albedo and cope with a 10% fluctuation in the daily average solar energy arrival, the insolation. And he said the snow daisies didn't know what they were doing. They were just doing their thing, responding to their conditions. But they functioned to increase the homeostasis of the Earth, to make the planet's thermal regulation system more resilient to changes. And he said the whole planet's like that. And of course, some people said, oh, great, marvellous. The scientists have finally come up to speed on the fact that the planet is alive and that everything's connected and that the God theory of the universe knows what she is doing. And Lovelock, the nuclear research physicist, hated that idea. Felt terribly misunderstood, so he did. But let's just say I'm not going to get into the issue of whether or not there is an overall sentient, self-aware Gestalt consciousness of the Gaia hypothesis, because that doesn't matter. If we're talking about all the living organisms on planet Earth functioning as one single organism dedicated to the homeostasis of the biosphere, to the maintenance of the optimal conditions for life on Earth, and everything else has failed to deal with the broadacre agro-cult of Harvest Everything-ism. 12,300 years, the Harvest Everything-ists have done exactly what the name implies, and they have turned food forest into desert wherever they've gone. Caught all the fish in the ocean, shot down all the birds in the sky, killed the beasts on the ground, put the topsoil at the bottom of the ocean, salinated the subsoil that was left, made a hell of a mess of everything. And now, the spawn of Uncle Spam have given the keys to their 7,500 nucleator warheads to an idiot buffoon, a lying, narcissistic bullshit artist with a really fragile ego, who's managed to stir up military tensions everywhere the excited states either has a military base or they supply either the government or the insurgents. And that means pretty much everywhere on the planet, while starting a trade war. Yeah, I think Prissy Dunce Tronnell Dump, as sad as it is to say it, he could be the biosphere's last desperate, faint hope to deal with the broadacre fossil-fueled, industrial-scaled, Harvest Everything-ists who are completely out of control. What is required is a sudden, complete cessation in the emission of greenhouse gas on any sort of industrial scale. And by fighting a war in among the oil fields and closing down world trade, this is the man who can do it. So apparently, somehow, the Gaia hypothesis has arranged for the spawn of Uncle Spam to elect Tronnell Dump to be the Prissy Dunce of the excited states of Norte Armed Americano. All the better to make America go away. Apparently, because if you can make America go away, if you can make world trade go away, if you can make agriculture go away, then apparently life on planet Earth is not necessarily doomed after all. Just as long as Prissy Dunce Tronnell Dump can make America go away. Wobbles on a lot to YouTube. Go home, Yankee, go home, fuck off. Go home, Yankee, fuck off. Right now, go home, Yankee, fuck off. Ciao.